So Vicki told me your topic was going to be innovation. So I thought, well, I'll just put a couple of slides together that talks a little bit about innovation innovating and adapting to market changes that we've had to do at ConsultNet. So somebody told me a long time ago that many CIOs don't really pay attention to who their staffing vendors are or what's going on in the staffing, what's going on staffing, which doesn't make any sense to me, since how are you going to get anything done if you don't have the right staffing solution at hand. But something we've been talking about for the last 15 years, which since the pandemic has really come into focus, is the talent pool is getting smaller. I heard a stat, I'm not sure it's true, it might be apocryphal, but I heard that there are more kids in drama programs than there are in engineering programs in the US. And that half of the students in graduate technology programs are all foreign students, which doesn't bode well for the US. And on top of that,
if you go to UTD, that's exactly the case.
Is it?
I've worked with a couple of programs over at UTD, and I'd say almost 80–90% of the kids walking around in the engineering are foreign Indian. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's gonna, that's definitely going to be an ongoing issue. Like I said, we've been in the industry, we've been talking about it for the last 15 years that things were going to get pretty thin, and I think it makes it all the more important that you have the right partner to help with staffing, because it's what we do day in and day out. And then at the same time, given how hot the market's been for the last 2 years, a lot of companies struggle with their hiring process. And if you're trying to do 2, 3, 4 interviews for a contractor, the chances of them still being available by the time you get to the end of that process, slim, pretty slim. And what's kind of adding to some of the issues is the fact that the whole MSP industry, which has been trying to commoditize staffing, and I'm biased, but I would say that you can't commoditize people effectively. You can't drive savings on the backs of talent because there's too much competition for it. So all they try to do is then the only place they can squeeze money out is from us. And if that's the case, then if you can't make a profit, doing that, you got to cut service, you got to cut quality, or you got to move offshore. And having run an offshore organization for 5 years, I can tell you it's notoriously inefficient compared to a US run operation. So you put all those things together, and that's that creates a real challenge in terms of what you're looking at in terms of the ability to get the right people that you need. So in our case, we really have to because we don't want to play in that commodity space, because personally I just I think that makes the situation much worse. Yes, you have you wind up with a bunch of vendors and you have these SLAs that don't make a lot of sense. I used to get in trouble all the time with the MSPs that I supported, because I would say, what's more important, filling the requirement or covering the requirement? And they would tell me covering, because we have to hit our 70% SLA with our client. It's like, what good does that do if you're just putting placeholders in there that aren't going to, wasting the manager's time? And so we believe that we've got to get out of that commodity space. We've got to move up the food chain, and to do that, we've created a bunch of new service offerings over the last several years. We created a media and entertainment group, which is very specifically focused on that industry, and we've really carved out a couple of niches there. One is ad revenue. We've written applications that help companies track how they manage ad revenue. And then the big thing that came up during the pandemic is rights management. I don't know if you noticed during the pandemic, all the streaming services, you saw a lot of foreign shows kind of coming through. It's because there was no new content being created in the US, so the only place they could get new content was to go overseas and bring all that stuff in. So you have to be able to prove that you have the right to broadcast that. And again, that's a space that we're in. The other thing that's really growing very rapidly for us right now is the nearshore. development center that we've got down in Guadalajara. We had, because of the talent pool issues that we saw coming, and because the prior administration was really not a big fan of the H-1B program, and they put a lot of restrictions on that. I think the renewal refusal rate went from 2% up to 40%, and all that did was just make everything worse. So we said, well, what if we could use the TN visa program, bring people up out of Mexico to help do that. And while a lot of clients seem to be interested in the concept, we just couldn't gain a lot of traction for them to hire, Mexican resources, even though, the quality of the Mexican resources is actually very, very good. I think Mexico is probably where India was maybe 25 years ago in terms of they do a lot of government support of, technical education and things. But we had a client that said, hey, would you guys be willing to put a development team together for us down in Guadalajara? I said, sure. So from that, we're up to about 65 people now. We should hit 100 before the end of the year. We're supporting 10 different clients. We started we had to put a 6-person Golang development team together. That grew to like 25 over a period of time. And that client is a repeat customer with us now. And we're supporting a number of different applications and technologies down there. And what's been really very pleasantly surprising is how good the resources are and how pleased our clients are with the quality of the work that we're getting out of our teams down there. And, for all the reasons that people like nearshore versus offshore, being able to have stand-ups in the same time zone. Yeah. Yes, it's slightly more expensive, but when you look at the efficiency gain that you get, it's the total cost of the project is pretty comparable to offshore as well, without some of the headaches. And then we also formed a Salesforce Solutions group, and we're a Salesforce, we're certified Salesforce partner, both for implementation and to make adjustments and things on the fly. But really what we're able to do is go in and talk to companies about, how you're using Salesforce. Are you getting the most out of it? Have you thought about doing it this way or that way? And that's really added a lot in terms of our ability to present ourselves as as more of a services company as well as a staffing company, so we can get out of that commoditized space. And that's really our plan that we're on right now is to hit 100 million by the end of 24, and looks like we're going to do that. We might even do it next year, but these guys are really going to be a big part of that in terms of helping us get into more companies because we have a little bit more to offer than a typical a staffing firm, and so we're pretty confident that that's going to be an area that we're going to continue to grow and to build up.
So when I start here by saying very unwelcome acronym, NESS, right? And so we're going to talk today about how to eliminate manual efforts in spreadsheets, aka NESSes, right? And talk about how CIOs can implement roads to efficiency innovations for teams and the departments that CIOs support. So that's the basis of today. From an organization of the conversation, my background, I'll jump into that and talk about how I've been in a CIO's shoes for the last 13 years. Talk a little bit about CIO challenges, right? What are the top things that CIOs think about? This is from my perspective, but get others' perspectives as well. I'll go through 4 roads to efficiency innovations for CIOs. Got a little deep thoughts, right? Just to dive into some deep thoughts, if you remember deep thoughts, sure. Jack Handy, SNL. Mm-hmm. And then we'll wrap it up. We'll start first with Charlie Brown and Lucy. Charlie Brown is very gullible. Right? Charlie just every time thinks, she's going to hold the ball for him. So he gets back and then takes a running start. And what do you know? He lands on his back again. right? So it reminds me of a quote: insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. Charlie Brown. And so with that in mind, let's jump into the world of CIO. So first, myself, John Ragsdale, founder of TAP Innovations in 2017. Spent the last 13 years as a CIO, largely in the healthcare space. Been in Atlanta and Baton Rouge and in Texas and even in the Charlotte area. But what I saw as a CIO were, coming back to my previous slide, I saw these manual efforts and spreadsheets. And I worked in small organizations, $20 million companies. I worked in $1 billion companies, right? So I saw kind of both spectrums, if you will, but I saw the same thing, right? A lot of manual efforts and spreadsheets in between systems. You got a CRM, you got a finance system, you got an HR system, you got an EMR, practice management system, point of sale, lots of systems, but they're all disparate most of the time. And so people create manual efforts and spreadsheets to bridge those gaps because they don't know that there's a better way. So I found as a CIO ways to connect those systems for myself and my teams. I didn't want my team to be inefficient. So we created our own, what I call the digital toolbox, tools that I just kind of carried from one position to the next. In addition, coming to what you were talking about earlier, we leveraged a global resource model, right? To be flexible, to really complement and add to my team, right? I could quickly move, and I even called it the gig economy global resource model. I'll talk about that in a second. So I combined this digital toolbox that was growing with this global gig economy model. We solved messes, right? And so we started a company in 2017 to do just that. Stayed a CIO through the end of 2021. We grew enough at TAP that I could step away and be full-time CEO. 2 years ago, we were 150,000. Last year we had 1.7. This year we're right at about 4. So some good growth, for a small company. Seen some nice awards as a CIO and some nice awards here for TAP. So super excited about what I'm doing, but I still have a CIO hat on to think about, hey, what can I do to help CIOs? Now to the next slide, I'm just going to populate these, let these marinate, right, digest these a little bit. These are some of the top topics that CIOs are worried about and think about every day. And in fact, one of the worst ones for me is this cloud security data center, and then this network outages. I hate those. It would drive me bananas because users get so frustrated. I just want to come and work, right? And my internet's not working. I can't get to my system, and they complain. Anyway, what I was going to do here with a group of CIOs is give each CIO 30 seconds and say, hey, give me a 30-second example of one of these, or if there's a different one, and of something that's happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I was going to get them to kind of chime in, just to kind of get engagement with the CIO.
And so how much was that sort of, made more of an issue based on sending everybody home during the pandemic?
Well, it's a great question. That was a challenge to just get workstations or laptops out to everybody. And, I need to connect, and, I don't have internet, or, I need a hotspot, right? That was just craziness to be able to manage that. Very challenging, right? And to be able to get workstations, right? Hey, all of a sudden I needed, 50, 100, laptops or workstations. Where am I going to find those? Right. And so I'll talk a little bit about that, but finding multiple sources where I could get equipment. And of course, the chip shortage and all that just caused and exacerbated everything.
And we experienced the same thing because, we had no idea if we could even run the business that way.
You don't know?
Yeah.
It was super duper challenging. So I'm going to share 4 what I call roads to efficiency innovations for CIOs. The first one, again, I alluded to it a second ago, this global gig economy resource model. I'm going to pull up an org chart from a couple of positions ago and just talk about how I approached
building a team as a CIO. Now, for this particular organization, I started in January 2020, 2 months before the world went crazy. I had 2 employees, right? Like a handful of vendors. Right? This was a private equity healthcare organization that, gosh, we had 13 or so locations, but we were about to embark upon a really vast M&A plan. And so this is what the organization looked like when I left in late 2021. But I'm less about the people, right? But more about how did I piece this team together quickly, leveraging when I say fractional resources or a global resource model. So note that the ones in gray are permanent employees, right? It's not a total outsource, right? Key permanent employees on my leadership team. But the ones in dark blue, purple are folks that I leverage third party from a partner, fractional resources, right? In some cases, in this case, for my service desk, I leveraged InDivision, right? If you're familiar with InDivision, the local MSP here in town, and they brought their resources to bear, but it was only a portion of the service desk. Right? They were good at what I call the tier 1.5, right? A little bit more than tier 1, but then I had a team, permanent team, that was focused on tier 2 and tier 3. Now moving from left to right, my field technicians, right? We were growing from 13, we grew to 60, 70 sites in a matter of 18 months, so across 4 different states. So we had to manage this field support, if you will. Again, gray boxes, key people that I needed to hire. Now in that, I leveraged 2 or 3 different companies like you guys. I didn't know you guys, but I leveraged a couple of different firms, some from here and some from, this was a Florida-based company. But I knew that I could leverage, a couple of key folks that could bring resources quickly. In addition, you see here this purple box, vendor support, right? There's very specific skill sets that, gosh, I can't depend on my team to know all those things. So I got to leverage key, in some cases, global resources, in some cases, local, in some cases, national. Everything from telco to clinical devices that we supported, physical security printers, cabling, even the ability to scale my field technicians quickly. Okay, if I had an outage or some emergency, I needed field techs within 2 or 3 hours, right? I had an organization I could call and they could get resources wherever it might be. Hey, up in Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, up in just north of Orlando or in Sarasota, wherever it was. So having that ability to be able to ramp up quickly, like a gig economy, like a Uber or DoorDash, but then I don't need them anymore. Moving to the infrastructure workstations, again, core group that my team, permanent team, but then several partners, vendors, fractional resources that I could turn to for in this licensing, which is a bear to manage. I can't depend on my 2 guys to manage licensing. That's not their skill set. I don't need to, so let me leverage a team. And notice I put all of these resources on my org chart, right? And I publish this org chart literally every week so that the whole team knows, hey, who's doing what, right? Super important. And an SD-WAN expert, ordered the equipment, that installed the equipment, that supported the backup. Right? We leveraged the SolarWinds backup appliance. Yeah, my team did, but I leveraged SolarWinds, right, for their expertise. Moving on to M&A. Notice my teams on the left were focused on support, right? I needed them literally every day. I couldn't pull them, right, and say, oh, by the way, can you come work on this new site, right? Because then it pulled away from support. So I had to have a dedicated support team and then a dedicated M&A team. Now the M&A, go like this, and would come back down. This is fine. Hence, again, gray boxes for permanent employees, but then lots of folks from a partnership standpoint, But again, very specific skill sets. I got a slide on my M&A approach here in just a second. Same thing from an application standpoint. This was a less mature team. You know, I focused on the left, getting that foundation built, and then just kind of moved my way from left to right. And so now, after I've gone, they've built out that team more with some permanent folks versus, you know, total leveraging their folks. So again, key innovation, figure out ways to leverage a global resource model, whether it's near shore, whether it's, you know, in some cases there's some offshore here, in some cases it was local, you know, actually specific to that particular location, depending on the need.
You still looking for your director of applications?
What's that?
Are you still looking for your director of applications?
They have somebody,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
And that is, I don't lead that team anymore. That was a few months ago.
Okay.
Good question.
Had to ask.
No, that's a fair question. All right, so as I mentioned, the M&A team, right? I called it the IT due diligence and transition, or DD trans, right? I kind of came up with that because IT needed to be the most organized in the world of M&A for a company. If IT is not organized, you cannot successfully implement a merger or acquisition. Everything will blow up if the systems don't work, right? So IT had to be the best of all the teams, you know, in the company. And so we had this process. One, I called it step 00 because it was before the signing, whatever they were buying, right? We needed to get in there, ask questions. We needed to actually find out information so we could present that to the business and say, hey, by the way, let me tell you what you're buying, right? No surprises after you sign and go, holy crap, we got to replace 300 machines. We didn't know that, right? So, you know, by the way, they need to write a check for $250,000. We didn't build that into the price. We should have, right? So that's what that pre-due diligence is for, and teaching the business that, hey, we need to get in there and, you know, ask all these questions. And you need a team with that skill set of, hey, I went into a healthcare practice and discover things really quickly, right? I've got a specific checklist of, I'm going to go check this. You go check this. You go check this. You go check this. I need access to the server. I need access to the phone system. By the way, where is the phone system? I don't know, some closet, you know, all of that needs to occur. This was healthcare, so practice management is basically the CRM for a healthcare company, right, where they keep all the patient information. So that is really critical to get moving quickly. Separate team, separate specific vendor that understands, you know, that particular software and how to move it. Electronic medical record, sometimes the PM and the EMR are together, sometimes separate. Email, getting from whatever they're on, in some cases, you know, Gmail or Freemail or whatever, to, you know, a standardized O365, moving AD, intranet, wherever their files are located in some old server that's about to crash, right, to get it into the cloud. Infrastructure, right, and network, really important. Probably one of the most important components in M&A world, especially in healthcare, because you discover all sorts of crazy network stuff that people bring to the table, some legacy stuff. You got to rip it out and put in, you know, your SD-WAN, your equipment quickly, so that one, you can monitor it and maintain it, and it's up to date, and it's actually works and stays up. Workstation devices are really important. Not necessarily mean you got to replace everything, but, you know, you start discovering XPs and thoughts, right? You're kind of like, wait, what? How do you find this stuff? So you got to, you know, find that out and develop a plan. Phone, right? Again, you get all sorts of, you know, things that you find. Bring them onto your standard phone system. Standardize them on the service desk, right? Now, you need to have a standard service desk, but how do you contact support? Well, before you do that, you need to train your support team on this new location, right? So that when they start calling the service desk, they go, okay, what location again? Who are you? You don't want that to happen. That's a terrible experience. So this KBA, knowledge base article documentation. So you standardize all of this, and then these other things, circuits, printers, even office music. Right? I know it's kind of minor, but hey, we need to come and standardize it. Right? This is our standard office music package. right? Because we can support it. Yeah, yeah. And then on one thing that's not even listed here, but like for healthcare, you got to go and perform a HIPAA assessment. Hey, here's where they are. Let's document those things. Let's get them into our standard monitoring. Let's train the users on anti-phishing, blah, 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 blah. So great program to make a CIO more efficient, especially in the world of things. Now, another key point, right? Again, this is the third innovation, road to efficiency innovation. I call it leveraging HCM. HR data, right? It's kind of the old term, but HCM is more current. Leveraging that source data. I actually call it the gold mine. Now, why so? Right? In an IT world, onboarding and offboarding is a big challenge, right? Keeping track of people coming in and out of the organization, whether they're employees or contractors or whoever's getting access to our system. It's a pain. And IT is typically the last to find out that somebody was hired, or the day before, or the Monday, hey, they're starting today, can you get them a computer? Really? So getting access to the source information, I found in the last 10 years was so critical for me being more efficient and to deliver better services, right? So what does that mean, right? If you can, I'll use my company's term, tap into the HCM data and actually pull that data, you can see who are the new employees and who are the folks that are terminated, right? Because they're going to keep that current, right? That's what you're paying people, that's payroll, and so they're going to keep that current. So why is that helpful? Well, you can pull that information in your ticketing system versus manually entering new users and phone numbers and emails in your ticketing system. Right? Why not get a nightly feed of ads and terms, put it in your ticketing system? It's current, right? Why not do the same for setting up a profile in your point of sale system? Right? Say you're a restaurant and you have multiple locations with 500, 1,000 employees, right? And you manually enter them into the point of sale system, or you manually disable their profile. What a pain, right? Why not just have a regular feed going from the HR system to the point of sale system to either enable a profile or disable it? Same thing in healthcare, right? Do the same thing. Hey, I got all these front desk and there's a ton of turnover, right? They got 60, 70%, sometimes 100% turnover every 2 or 3 weeks. And you got to keep track of that. And HR is like, oh, I forgot to call IT, right? We need somebody to have access to this system. So why not just automatically have that problem? ERP, if you're in some other type of industry or manufacturing, right, do the same thing. And then the phone system. We got to set up, Marion phone system. Why not have that automatically, or just turn them off? Right. So we figured out, not just within TAP, but me as a CIO, how to leverage that gold mine of HCM data in multiple systems. Right. Once you had it, then you can use it in multiple ways. Make you super efficient, and then again, you just deliver better services. Right. People are pleased. Like, wow. My profile's already set up. Isn't that cool?
So how much do you access like patient data, patient interaction, in your with your company's role?
A lot.
Because I've reached an age where I probably visit my doctor more often than some of these other folks here, but it just drives me nuts that every time I go in, I have to fill out yet another profile.
Terrible. I hate it too.
Yeah.
Like, I got to fill out these 10 pages.
Don't you have all this information?
Really?
Yeah.
I've been here multiple times. No, that is exactly the things that we look to improve on. In fact, I had a conversation on healthcare, but with a gentleman who owns a gym. And he said the same thing. He said, hey, I know what you do. We've got this paper form that we fill out. Can you take that and replace the paper form, have some kind of electronic capture, and put it into our system? Absolutely. Like, those are the things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But that drives me crazy. If you're in healthcare, you're like, really, I got to sign all these forms again?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are solutions. Either people don't want to pay for them, or they don't know that they exist. Right? So it's kind of.
So most of these fall in the RPO role for technology, because you're going in and simplifying people's and day-to-day data, things that, we still need people.
Oh, yeah, you know, hands down, big and small organizations, right? All you gotta do is ask, hey, where are you managing? And people start to smile and go, oh, it's a process over here, right? Absolutely, there are tons of opportunities. And, you know, people implement, go back to the different acronym systems. People have a separate CRM, they have a separate finance system, they have a separate EMR, they have a separate point of sale. Now, there are some companies maybe that have some ERP that covers all of that, but that's pretty rare, especially in the SMB space that might be 10 million to 500 million. So these disparate systems, and they buy the best of breed, right? Sometimes there are integrations, or they at least have published some APIs, but you know, who has an IT team that knows how to do that, right? It's not an easy thing to do. Now we specialize, TAP specializes in helping those SMBs make those connections at an affordable price point. And I'll give you one example. Asking, so Urban Air, one of our customers. Familiar with Urban Air? They're a trampoline jump park based here in Dallas. They have 150 locations across the U.S. Now they also own Unleashed Brands as the parent. They own Little Gym, Snackology, and 2 or 3 other brands. But Urban Air, again, come back to this model, 10,000 people. This was in August of 2020. So right in the middle of the pandemic, they're trying to get back. But you know, you think about a trampoline park, lots of, hey, I got to sanitize this, I need to do this, and a checklist of training things. When I hire a new person, hey, by the way, you need to go in the training system, you need to learn how to do these things. Well, they were manually entering them in the training system. 10,000 people, oh, that's a bear. So we built an integration from the HR system. It literally runs every hour and brings over new employees and hey, turn off this employee based on the ads we're trying. They love it, right? And we're just expanding to their other brands. So it's things like that that are super. The last one I bring up, fourth, and this is more on a process, but I call it a free innovation, right? Because it's literally free, right? Recognize your team members. Now, here's the example. A couple of positions ago, I was working for a consulting firm, CGI, and we were working for humanity, doing some project work. I brought on some new project managers. We were struggling a little bit with performance, and the client wasn't very happy. So I was trying to ratchet up the quality, right, for project management in the area of budget and timeline and meeting requirements, right, your standard stuff in project management. Didn't have any money to incentivize or give gifts or give gift cards or anything like that. But my wife actually came up with this idea, so I'll give her credit. But here she said, hey, why don't we do this? Set your goals of the things that need to hit every week. And if a project manager hits those goals, then take a little green box. It was about this. She wrapped them up in a little box and just put it on the top of their cube, right? To say, hey, you met your goals this week. And everybody could see across the cubes, right, if we had. And then we did one more thing. We took a little green Andy's mint and put it on the desk. Loved it. And by the end of the week, they were like, hey, who's got a box and who doesn't? I mean, people were really engaged and more. So the little things like that really go a long way. And those are free, basically. Right? Okay, it cost me $10, but free to do. So take advantage of those types of innovations to really raise the productivity and raise the performance.
That's a great idea. I mean, we do, because that's something that's, it's a big thing for us as well is, we have metrics that we're trying to get people to hit. And, we're constantly trying to figure out ways to reinforce that and to get people to run contests and do all kinds of stuff. But that's just such a simple and great idea that because people love recognition.
Yes. I had a little wrapped green box, but that was like the talk of the team. Did you get a green box this week? So find those creative ways to recognize people and engage them, etc. All right, deep thoughts. Right, I just looked these up. But co-founder backup. Never trust a computer you can't trust. Right?
Yeah.
Like that one. Never let a computer know you're in a hurry. Right? Have you ever started, you know, you're watching the computer and you're watching, like, it
Yeah.
seems to be running slow right now, like,
Yeah, I
sitting
know.
watching, get
Yeah.
mad with it. Hardware, the parts of the computer system that can be kicked, right? Frustrated, it's hardware. Pablo Picasso thought this was interesting. Computers are useless. They can only give you answers. I mean, okay. Everyone is born a genius, but the process of living leads genius.
Ain't that the truth? Huh? Yeah.
All right. Computer lets you make more mistakes faster than any invention in history, with the exception of handgun.
Especially the combination of those two.
Right.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Bill Gates, GM had kept up technology. They would all be driving $25 cars that got 1,000 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And then the last one, technology makes it possible for people to gain control over everything except technology. So I'm doing a CIO interview series. I'm going to work on planning now. I'm going to start in the 2023 first quarter. And, you know, looking for folks that are interested. Now, here's the format, a little bit different than, you know, maybe a traditional CIO network. Right? You have technology involved, you have tech titans and then these. And largely those are set up so that vendors can have access to CIOs. I get that. Right? I'm a vendor now, and I want access to them. But I don't want to do it like that, right? I want to reach out to CIOs because I remember being a CIO. And I was most of my career in that mid-market, right? That 20 million to 500 million. Most are not listening to those folks. Right? If you look at technology ball, right, and you can look at the people that they, you know, either recognize or talk to, right? They're the, you know, billion-dollar CIOs, right? Barry Serkin, great guy. I like Barry. Right, the CIO for NTT Data, $6 billion company. If you want to pay attention to him, I get that. But what about the CIO that's, you know, a $150 million company here in Dallas? I could name any of them, right? I want to reach out to those folks and give them an opportunity to voice whatever they want to voice, right? Now, if you go to them and say, hey, we'd love to write an article. I don't have time to write it. No problem. Let's get on the phone for 15, 20 minutes. Right? I'll ask you a few questions. We'll take notes, write the article for you. We'll give you a chance to review it and edit it, and we'll publish it under your name. Right? Give you your brand, give you your company brand, and if there's a vendor involved in whatever you're talking about, we'll give them, you know, props. No cost. Right? This is not a, I don't know if you've ever seen the, I get emailed at least twice a week. Hey, we'd love to publish your story in, you know, some kind of CIO magazine for the low price of $3,000.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I get that all the time. Yeah.
Or it's free to you, but give us a list of 10 of your vendors so that they can buy ads. I'm not going to do that, right? You know, so this is no cost, right? Just promoting CIOs. We'll see where it goes, right? We can always do a podcast, right? But article is really easy. Like I said, I'm not a podcast. Fine. Let's just do an interview. We'll record it. We'll write an article, whatever it is. We'll publish it, right? Under your name, powered by TAP, right? TAP gets, you know, the credit for publishing, no cost, right? We might even do like a kudos every month or every quarter, right? To a particular CIO, right? Because I want to give CIOs credit. And now I was part of the Inspire CIO Orby Awards, but you get behind the scenes, right? Get nominated, you get to be part of this, you know, cool finalist, and you get to go to a nice dinner. And at the end, they sit you down, they bring you in and say, all right, here's the proposition. It's only going to cost you $2,000 a year to be a part of this organization going forward. Now, you can either figure out a way to charge that in, or you can pay it yourself. Like, come on, really? Right? So that's not, there are no strings attached to this. So stay tuned. Right? Love to figure out ways to include others. Right? This is not necessarily just an exclusive TAP thing. And we're just formulating how it might work. We don't want to get too stringent with the rules or how it works, but I want to get the word out to more CIOs than maybe have been included in the past.
Are you open to people from outside the area?
Absolutely.
Because I think we can direct a few folks your way if you're open to that. Yeah.
I mean, I will reach out to my network here in Dallas. I have a few people in Atlanta, but absolutely open to the rest of the country, right? If you know folks that want to be included, right? TAP has got business across the country. Anyway, so I just
Yeah.
want to make folks aware of that that's something that we're working on. I'm going to do an offshoot of, I'll call them SMB CEOs too, right? Because that's kind of my world these days. So I'm going to do maybe something separate. I don't know if I'll do them at the same time, but so
Yeah.
something new.
I mean, that's our space too, you know, small to mid-sized businesses, and that's where we tend to, that's our sweet spot, so.
And that's how to contact me. That's my e-business card.